Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, we're gonna let people come on in the room for a minute. I'm not gonna sing "Come on in the room." That's not. I'm not
But you
that
could.
churchy. I'm not.
I know
I'm not
you
that.
could.
I could. I could. Come on in the room, everybody. We're going live. We are live. How about that? Um, we're gonna talk to you today about the Woven Together series that Sacred is doing. So sit tight. Come on in. Get comfortable. Welcome. Hello, hello, hello.
Reverend Naomi, you've got your bevy. I got my bevy.
I got a bevy here. I'm a Waterloo seltzer addict, I will say. So, I always have one of these by my side. Yes. So get you something to drink and sit tight. We're just gonna be on for a minute. Welcome in. Welcome in. I know people on my feed are like, she went live. What is this? So stay to see what we're gonna be talking about for the next few minutes here. Come on in the room. Welcome. If you are interested in topics including faith and reproductive justice and how we defeat white Christian nationalism, you're going to want to hang
Mm-hmm.
around for the next
Mm-hmm.
few minutes. Yes. um, we're here. Look, I see some comments. Hey, okay. Yes. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Well, the beauty and the magic of technology is I can be in Philadelphia where I am, and Reverend Angela can be, where are you, in Texas?
I'm in Dallas today.
In Dallas today. But we're welcoming you right into our living room here so we can have a conversation about faith and reproductive justice and this
Mhm.
extraordinary series that Sacred has put together. So come on in the room. My name is Reverend Naomi Washington-Leapheart, and I use she, her pronouns. And I am a Christian minister and movement strategist and theological educator based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And my colleague and friend, Reverend Angela, will introduce herself. Go ahead, Reverend Angela.
Thank you, Reverend Naomi. I am Reverend Angela Tyler Williams. My pronouns are she and her. And in this space, I'm very proud to be the co executive director of Sacred, the Spiritual Alliance of Communities for Reproductive Dignity. And we'll get into what all that means and what it is that we're trying to do today. I also want to name that I'm a queer and it is central to my calling to be a white Christian speaking out against white Christian nationalism and working with partners and colleagues and following the leadership of Black women to support the work of faith and reproductive justice in this country.
Yes, love it, love it. Um, I'm excited to be here. Angela, you tell us a little bit more why we're here tonight. What specifically are we here to hear about?
Yeah, so we are talking about the Woven Together series. It is 6 webinar sessions that are starting next Tuesday, September 24th. And we're going to go all the way past the election to December 3rd. And so we've got different partners coming in to lead these workshops, lead these webinars that have some sort of intersection around faith, reproductive justice, and defeating white Christian nationalism. And how we sort of got to this is recognizing that sacred, our vision is that we shift the culture to make reproductive justice a lived reality, and that religious communities are a part of that culture shift work. And as we look at what's happening today, that there are so many things that are happening politically, religiously, and with our reproductive lives, but
Mm,
all of it is woven together. And we're watching these forces of white Christian nationalism threaten our families and our communities every single day. You know what I'm talking about, Reverend Naomi. Like,
I know. I know.
it's hard out here.
It
And
is. It
it's going to get
is.
harder.
Right. 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 Right.
And so
So,
Sacred is a multi-faith organization, but we understand that so much of the dominant culture comes from a particular understanding of Christianity. And so it is up to those of us from the Christian tradition who have Christianity in our lineage to to challenge those forces of white Christian nationalism. And we know that this is important for this election cycle, but it's also work. Like, no matter what happens, the work is still going to be the same
right.
after this election.
Right. 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 That's key. That's key. I mean, I think that much of the conversation these days is um, kind of binary in nature, right? That we don't have to worry about any of the threats if the election result goes in a particular way. And so I'm really excited that this series prepares us for whatever reality we may face after November. And so tell us kind of what's at stake. Why is this series needed now? Who is it for particularly? Talk to us about the stakes.
Yeah, I mean, the stakes are so high. Um, and our solution to that, our liberation, is all bound up together.
Mm,
Our liberation is bound up just as our oppressions are bound up and woven together. And so, again, we're talking about white Christian nationalism. We're talking about this force, and I'll get you to talk about that more in a little bit and like some of the history bits of that. But it's coming to life in a particular way, particularly around like Project 2025
right,
and these, like, there is a plan, there is a literal book. It is hundreds of pages long. And this has been true for the past 40 years, is that the opposition is organized. They are organized, they have a plan, and they are getting the power to put those things into place, even if that does not represent people like you and me, if that does
right,
not represent our values, that does not represent our traditions, that does not represent what we how we want to raise our families, that doesn't represent how we want to live in this world. And I would say that where we are, Sacred's talking a lot about apocalypse right now.
mm,
And, you know, some apocalypse can conjure up like the rapture or like the end times and
right.
judgment day. But if we go back to the original Greek apocalypsis, it's really a revelation, an unveiling, an uncovering of what was
Mm,
already there. So
mhm,
I think while the stakes are really high and we're at a fever pitch with this election, what we're seeing is the unveiling of what has been there for decades, of these forces that have been at work, for political turmoil, systemic violence, environmental collapse, late stage capitalism, fascism, like all of it, all of it, all of it. We are in this time of real upheaval.
mm,
And so, what do we do with that? And what we can do with that is to come together. That dominant culture really wants us to like turn away from each other and to have more infighting and like a divide and conquer. But this is a time to come closer, to start
mm,
to deepen these relationships, to figure out what we need and who we need to be in relationship, what skills and resources we need to get through whatever is coming. And so that's what we're trying to do with this series,
mhm.
is make spaces for folks to come together to learn from some really awesome experts like yourself and the whole great lineup that we have, um, so that we can really start that transformation and build these relationships and a web of a weaving again, of what will get us through this.
Mm, mm. I love that. Part of the danger of this political moment is in separating us, detaching us, dismembering us, right? And
Mm,
so
mhm,
this series brings together all of the kind of intersections of religion and reproductive justice in a really meaningful way. Um,
mhm,
so talk to us again about who is the Woven Together series for specifically. Like,
mhm.
who do you imagine would be interested
Yeah.
in this stuff? Yeah.
Yeah, I am going to answer that, but I cannot let you say the dismembering without it conjures up for me the Eucharistic table that we
Mm,
have in Christianity, where we come together and we have this sacrament of remembering the body of
yes.
Christ. This site
Yes.
of like great violence, of state
Mm,
violence upon our messianic figure, upon the Savior. And what we do in ritual is we come back together and we practice that remembering.
that's right.
So that's super rich. But who is this series for? Let me get back to the question. This is for anyone who's starting to learn about faith and reproductive justice. If you're like, what even is reproductive justice? Come on in. This is for you. If you're like, how can I, as a faithful person, bring my faith to my work of supporting abortion access and reproductive justice in my own community? This is for you.
Mm,
If you are not a person of faith, but you work in the reproductive health rights and justice movement, this is for you too. We hope that you can come in and learn a little bit more about faith communities, learn a different narrative, hear some different stories, we sort of break open and then piece back together some interpretations, particularly from a Christian tradition, because that is what has been used to cause so much harm, both in policies and like in protesters at clinics. Like there's a lot of violence that is done in the name of Christianity. If you're a faith leader and you are ready to challenge the forces of white Christian nationalism,
mm.
this series is for you. And you're like, I have no idea how to talk about it. I don't know how to preach about it. I don't know how to pray about it. Come on in. There's other folks who are like wrestling and struggling with this in their own space. And this is for everyone who wants a network where religion and the call for justice are inextricably linked together. So if you can see how those might fit together, how they might weave together, if you will, this session and this series is for you.
Wow. So like everybody, really, I want everybody
Yeah.
to check out the link that we're sharing so you can learn about this Woven Together series. This is for you. So great. That sounds great. That sounds great. I'm really excited to be participating.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, Reverend Naomi, I want to pass it back to you for a moment. You
Okay.
are one of the presenters. Yours is
Hmm.
coming up on nope, October 1st, not December, October 1st.
Hmm.
And so, can you give us a little bit of a preview of the topic that you're going to present on, and why you and the Political Research Associates are excited to be a part of this series?
Yes. So, in my little introduction, I said I'm a movement strategist, and how I live into that vocational call is as the Strategic Partnerships Director of Political Research Associates, PRA for short. PRA is a nonprofit organization that is a social justice research and strategy center. For 40 years, we have been supporting organizations, movement leaders, journalists, and folk across the social sector to work together to build a more just and inclusive democratic society. And our role in that is by providing the movement with research that
Yeah.
offers strategic insight into what the far right is doing. And then we
Mm.
analyze that research so that movements can build better strategy to defeat
Mm.
the right. So we research the right. Our slogan is inform your resistance, right? Our resistance has
Mm.
to be grounded in good information, good intelligence, right? And PRA is positioned to get that intelligence. And so I'm a movement strategist with PRA, and I'm excited to be participating in this series by talking with my colleague Fred Clarkson, who's one of our researchers, about the New Apostolic Reformation and dominionism and
Now,
what
what
these
are
things.
those? What?
Listen,
Whoa, those are big words,
let me tell you, let
big
me tell you,
concepts.
let me tell you. Now, the NAR, so the New Apostolic Reformation,
Mhm,
is a threat to democracy, but it's kind of this movement that has been operating under the radar, right? Many people are like, I've never heard of the New Apostolic Reformation, but I guarantee you, you have heard its kind of
mhm,
features. You have seen
mhm,
its features, right? So the New Apostolic Reformation is one of the most important political movements of our time that is flying under the radar. And there was this
mhm,
guy, C. Peter Wagner, who was a seminary professor back in the 90s, who coined this term because he observed that there were all of these Pentecostal and charismatic, mostly, churches, evangelical leaning churches that were outside of denominational structures, but they were growing at rapid pace. And so he thought, there's got to be a way to organize and mobilize these churches in particular that are outside of denominational restraint, um, and that are open to the kind of theological and philosophical orientation that he wanted to present. And that theological orientation has to do with this notion of strategic level spiritual warfare. So when you
whew,
hear Pastor Paula White, praying the
mhm,
demon, binding the demons away, when there was a pre-debate prayer call the other night, for example, right before the debate, they invited Donald Trump to this prayer call, and they were praying evil spirits away. They were beating back the demonic spirit. When you read about folk talking about Vice President Kamala Harris as a Jezebel or having a Jezebel spirit, these are NAR people, right? And what has resonated in this movement is the idea of the seven mountain mandate. We're going to talk about this in the workshop, but this is the idea that Christians, and mind you, not all Christians, you got to be the right kind of Christian. You got to be an
I don't think
NAR
I'll take
Christian,
you or me.
right? You and me don't fit. Okay, we're not the right kind of Christian. But so certain kind of Christians are supposed to have dominion over
Mhm,
society by conquering these seven mountains of influence: culture, right? Government, religion, the family,
mhm,
education, arts and entertainment, right? Business, the media, right? These seven pillars of society, NAR adherents say, should be ruled by a certain kind of Christian, right? And so there is a lot of money and a lot of political capital behind positioning NAR Christians, including our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. Hello. Including,
hello.
I'm gonna just call out, Supreme Court Justice Alito, who was flying the an appeal to heaven flag at his
Mhm,
house, right? This is one of the symbols of the NAR movement, right? That these are the folks we should place in positions of power so that they can exercise dominion over
mhm,
society, right? And once this happens, the end game is once Christians control everything, Jesus can come back,
mm,
right? So there's an end game. Speaking of the apocalypse, there's an apocalyptic end game to the NAR theology. These apostles and prophets of NAR are increasingly politically powerful. They are proximate to decision makers both at the federal level and at the state and local level. So think about your school boards, your sheriff's departments, think about mayors, think about state representatives, state legislators, right? So this is a significant political movement that is actually behind some of the anti-reproductive justice, anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigrant, Christian Zionist, right, sentiments that have been pervasive in our society. This is what I would call the moral foundation for things like the MAGA movement, right? So we need to understand it as people of faith so that we can come
mhm,
up with a strategy to defeat it. So on October 1st, my colleague and I will be leading a workshop on dominionism and the New Apostolic Reformation.
Mm, thank
Yeah,
you, Reverend Naomi. That was quite a teaser because I am thinking about so many things that come up with that. In particular, is like you and we talk about what we're seeing now is the result of a 40-year
right,
campaign.
right.
And what we do at Sacred is talking about culture change and culture shift and how are we going
Hmm.
to know it when we see it. And as you were saying, like no one knows that this is this shadow group that's
Right.
pulling all these strings, but you see it in the way that the culture shifts. You see it in the things that local party leaders are starting to say, and you're like, they didn't used to say that,
That's
or
it.
like,
That's
where'd
it.
that flag come from? And like
Hmm.
now again, more unveiling and revealing, more apocalypsis, folks feeling bold enough to like fly those flags publicly. And
Right.
like it's
Yeah, yeah,
really
yeah.
fascinating and really important for us to, as you said, like inform the resistance and
Hmm.
know for real what it is that we're organizing against and what we're
Hmm.
organizing for.
Yeah, this is a moment where we're seeing the mainstreaming of a lot of ideas that were before marginal, that were before considered
Right.
extremist. And that's the danger in this
Mhm.
moment, that what it used to be kind of outmoded, outdated, strange, odd, is increasingly becoming um, mainstreamed and dominant. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
And that is exactly why we've got this series and why we're
that's right.
doing this work. Thank you so much for giving a taste. I want to take a little bit and talk about some of the other sessions that we've
Yeah,
got.
go for it. Go for it.
So we are starting next Tuesday, September 24th. We've got a really awesome session called Resisting Power and Control, RJ, or Reproductive Justice Lessons from the Anti-Sexual Violence Movement. And our presenters are going to be Tara Corbett and Togor Gatto. I'm really excited to hear about the ways that the cross-movement pollination can happen as we build each other up and support each other. Then you've already given us a taste of October 1st. Come back, sign up. I'm sure we'll get the link in the chat to see Reverend Naomi and Fred Clarkson on what you need to know about dominionism and the New Apostolic Reformation. Then skipping over to October 22nd, there's some hoes in this house with Minister Constance Dunlap. I am so excited for that one. She's going to take us through different characters in the Bible who really took hold and ownership over their own sexuality and what that can teach
Mm.
us today. That one's really exciting for me. Then after that, we've got Minister Constance Dunlap coming back for an encore. She's doing one on abortion stigma for clergy and faith leaders. So if you are still sort of having questions about that, and you don't know, you haven't maybe done all of your work on like, how do I support abortion from my faith-based perspective, Minister Constance is going to do all of that for us. And then we skip to November 19th. We're hearing from Dr. Christine Ryan and our partners at the Columbia Law, Rights, and Religion Project. And they're going to talk about religious liberty law and abortion restrictions and how we can say, and you and I can recognize that all of these abortion bans also violate our religious freedom as well as our
Right.
reproductive freedom. We're seeing some really successful cases across the country, particularly of Jewish folks, of Muslim folks, saying that these don't actually represent our laws, represent our religious understandings. And we've got to make a different case for that. And the pros and the cons of that, because sometimes we can get into some sticky water of like, oh, now we just put something on paper that we didn't actually want on paper.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and we're going to close it out with our very own sacred scholar in residence, Dr. Elizabeth Fries. She's going to do Towards Eve's Exodus, Challenging Male-Centric Beliefs About Procreation. that's all about a re-envisioning of Genesis 1 through 3 and connecting it to the Exodus, and what does creation, what does labor, and what does God have to say about all of that in the Bible. So I'm super excited for this
Wow.
whole series, and
Yeah.
how many
Yeah.
we've got showing up for this.
I love it. I love the breadth and the width of the topics. There's something in there for you. So if you are listening to this live right now, I want you to go to the link that we put in the chat and register for this Woven Together series. We're open for questions. If you're watching and you have any questions about this series, you want us to repeat something that we've said already because you missed it, go ahead and put that question in the chat. We've got a few more minutes and we'll take your questions. In the meantime, let's just say aloud and where people can go to register to find out about this series.
Yeah, so you are watching this on Sacred or Reverend Naomi's social media channels. So you can find all of that information at our link tree, linktree.e/sacred_repro. It's
That's
probably a
really
better way
cool.
to like read
I
those.
mean, that's literally what the link is. Yes, 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 yes.
It was. And so you can see all of the series there. While I'm on it, I do want to make a note that we're trying to make this series as accessible to people as we can, because we recognize folks are in a lot of different spaces economically. So access is free, but we do have a suggested donation of $25 per session or $150 for all six. But there are lots of different ticket options, and you can sort of pay what you can to access this resource. And we hope that we see you there, and we hope that you can share this with all the networks that you're a part of. As you've heard,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's for everybody.
It is for everybody. So whether you're clergy, whether you're a person of faith who's curious, whether you're a kind of political geek and you're keyed into this political moment and you want to know how we can fight back against the anti-democratic forces that threaten um, our lives, literally our
Right.
lives. This series is for you. We are weaving together religion and reproductive justice and all of the intersections within those two spaces. And so join us for this Woven Together series. I'm really excited to bring my colleague Fred Clarkson, who is a far right researcher, to our session. If you're curious about the religious movement that is undergirding the anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, anti-women, anti-immigrant sentiment that seems to be becoming more and more mainstream, come on out to the session that we're doing on October 1st. We'd really love to have you. And then these other sessions are going to be so dope. Listen, you gotta join this Woven Together series. So join us by registering at the link in the chat. I'm so excited, Reverend Angela.
I am so excited, Reverend Naomi. Like, we get to do this again in a couple of weeks.
Listen. This is, I love to partner with Sacred. Sacred is gonna make plain, right, the threats that we face, but not only the threats that we face, the opportunities that we have
Yes.
to
Yes.
challenge these threats and to
Mhm.
restore the power to the people. So listen, if
Yes.
you don't know about Sacred, you know now. So go ahead and follow Sacred. Follow Sacred on Facebook, follow Sacred on Instagram. Stay up to date on all of the things, including this series. You can also follow me if you want to on Instagram. I am at Oh Holy Shift, shift with an F. Don't listen. Don't forget
Not
the
that
F.
word. It's a
That's somebody
five-letter
else.
word.
That's somebody else. Oh, holy shift. And then if you're curious about Political Research Associates, the organization that I work for that does research on the far right, you can follow PRA at PRA Eyes Right. We're a bunch of research
I love that
policy
handle.
nerds.
I
And
love it
so
so
we're
much.
go ahead and follow PRA on all the social media at PRA Eyes Right. looking forward to this series. Thank you so much, Reverend Angela, for hopping on here with me to talk about this
Thank
series.
you. And I want to give a real quick shout out to the folks who are supporting us behind the scenes, making this live beautiful, giving all the links to
Yes.
the Reverend Lindsay Godwin, Sacred's Program Operations Coordinator. Thank you so much for making this happen. And to Reverend
Mm-hmm.
Cantina Washington-Leapheart, thank you for supporting and running that chat.
Yes. Thank you both for making us look good. Yes.
For real.
Uh, all right. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody who's watching on September 24th for the first workshop in the Woven Together series. Thank everybody for listening. We'll see you later.
Thanks, y'all.